And on the line with us is Carl Higbie, the founder and president of George Washington Leadership Foundation, former Navy SEAL and author of Enemies, Foreign and Domestic, A SEAL's Story, GWLeadershipFoundation.com, as in George Washington, is the website. Carl, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me on, Tom.
So this morning, Hillary Clinton said that Donald Trump is giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States by the way that he's talking about Islam as the problem rather than, these radicalized individuals as the problem. And his campaign now is swinging back saying, what, are you accusing us of treason? Because giving aid and comfort to the enemy is the definition out of the Constitution of treason. Is your guy a traitor?
Absolutely not, Tom. I think you know the answer to that. I think the fact is Donald Trump is in no way, shape, or form giving aid to the enemy. If anything, I would say Hillary Clinton is, because she's the one who's trying to ease any type of scrutiny onto radical Islam. And let's be honest here. Is this ideology, this method, while it doesn't represent all of Islam, it is deeply rooted in the Muslim culture and the Muslim religion.
No, it's not. It's deeply rooted in Wahhabism, which is the Saudi version of Islam. Yeah, I'll give you that. But that's like, this is like trying to indict all of Christianity because Jehovah's Witnesses won't take blood transfusions, or probably more accurately, it's like trying to indict all of humanity because Jim Jones killed 300 people who were his followers. I mean, ISIS no more represents Islam than Jim Jones represented, Protestant Christianity. And nobody, to the best of my knowledge, was running around going, in the wake of Jonestown and stuff like that, or any of the other. I mean, there's no shortage of Christian debauchery. Eric Rudolph blowing up the Olympics in the name of Jesus, right? Which is something that still goes on. These people who are assassinating abortion doctors in the name of Jesus. We don't call them Christians. These people are not. You're doing ISIS's work, Carl, by referring to this as radical Islamic terrorism. You are doing ISIS's work as well.
I find that pretty offensive, Tom, considering I put my life on the line to defend your right to sit here and say that. Your right to be offended is absolute, Carl. I absolutely respect your right to be offended. But I'm telling you, what our intelligence community tells us, what the Pentagon tells us, what the generals, to quote Donald Trump, tell us, is that when we take these nut jobs and we characterize them as Islamic, as if they were representative of, 1.5 billion people on this earth, what we are doing is notifying every Muslim in our country, and particularly if we do it by saying things like we're going to ban all Muslims from coming to the United States. What we do is we tell every Muslim in this country, you are on the receiving end of our hatred, and we are at war with you. And that's crazy. That's like if after Eric Rudolph had blown up and killed that woman at the Olympics in the 1990s in Atlanta, if after that we had started talking about, well, we've got to do something about this radical Christianity, and in fact there were a few people like me who were saying things like that and were rightly put in our place by people who were saying, no, wait a minute, this Eric Rudolph guy, he's got nothing to do with Christianity. These people who are murdering in the name of Jesus, they are not Christians. So, Tom, what generals and what intelligence specialists have said that we need to stop referring to this as any fraction of Islam?
Well, I think Colin Powell would be a good place to start. George W. Bush said it. I mean, he's a little bit above the generals. He's the president of the United States. In fact, it was one of the very first speeches he gave after 9/11 was in a mosque about how we're not at war with Islam. This has nothing to do with Islam. During the Bush administration, they did not use this kind of language.
Actually, George Bush frequently referred to this as a radical fraction of Islam. You have a candidate now who won't even admit that this is fundamentally rooted in Islam. I mean, it does say
it is not.
Okay, well,
it is not any more than killing abortion doctors is rooted in Christianity. I mean, sure, these are both Bronze Age religions.
You know, you're going to find a culture in the Quran, and you're going to find a culture in the New Testament, and you're going to find a culture in the Old Testament. In Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you're going to find that Bronze Age culture in all three places that basically sets, you know, that acknowledges slavery as an okay thing. That's part of Christianity. That says that, you know, women, Paul saying in Acts that, you know, or in Romans rather, that women should be in the back of the church with their heads covered and keep their mouths shut. I mean, you know, the Ten Commandments. If your child talks back to you, you should stone him to death. This is, you know, we could talk about, you know, how evil Christianity is or Judaism is, but it's not. There are modern versions of this stuff, and we need to be reaching out to Muslims in the United States. Where the rhetoric, this rhetoric makes it easier for young people like this idiot in New Jersey and New York to say to himself when the ISIS guys reach out to him, or even if they don't, I mean, reach out in general, you know, with their videos, to say, yeah, I'm one of those aggrieved people.
Well, let's go to the guy in Minnesota. I mean, this guy went around asking people if they were Muslim, and if they weren't, he'd stab them.
My point. So, he is convinced because of rhetoric like your candidate is using, to ban all Muslims from the United States, where this is a war of civilizations, it's a war of religions, Christianity against Islam. That kind of rhetoric is going to cause mentally unstable people who are Muslims, or, you know, to say, okay, I'm the one that they're coming after. I guess I better react.
But Thom, this was going on long before Donald Trump was a candidate.
Yeah,
so what caused that?
What was going on?
Well, let's see, a bunch of people who did it in the name of Islam flew some planes into two of our tallest buildings in New York City.
Since our invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, we are seeing more and more of this, and which is an entirely reasonable thing. We invaded, destroyed, and occupied 2 Muslim countries, and then screwed up 3 or 4 others. And you know,
what was that in response to?
It was in response to George W. Bush deciding that instead of taking Mullah Omar's offer of arresting Osama bin Laden and putting him on trial in a neutral third country, George W. Bush decided no. He wanted to have a war in Afghanistan, as he had told his biographer in 1999, Mickey Herskowitz. He said, my father had all his political capital from the war in Iraq, and he blew it. Because he only had a 3-day war. He said, if I get elected, I'm going to invade Iraq, and I'm going to have a successful presidency. He laid this out before he even announced his candidacy for president. And his definition of a successful presidency was that he could privatize Social Security with the political capital he would get from being a wartime president, which is the first thing he tried to do in 2005 after he was reelected. So, yeah, I put this at the feet of George W. Bush, too.
Yeah, but we went into Iraq and Afghanistan as a response to 9/11, Thom? You can't deny
No, I think that we went into Iraq and Afghanistan as a response to George W. Bush's political ambitions.
I think you're totally off base there. And
Carl, tell me how the world would be different if George W. Bush had said to Mullah Omar, who he had been doing business with. You know, he had given him $40 million to burn the opium crops in March of 2001, and Mullah Omar did it. And opium production dropped dramatically, which was a wonderful thing for Europe and the Eastern countries and Russia that were all suffering from a heroin epidemic, because all of a sudden heroin got real expensive. What if he had said, sure, you know, arrest bin Laden and let's send him to Sweden or something, or to The Hague for trial. We'll provide the evidence. You know, let's bring the world together and have a police action to look for anybody who might, you know, there were fewer than 5,000 people at that point associated with, seriously associated with Osama bin Laden. Only 20,000 people had been through his so-called training camps. It was a little tiny fraction of people. It did not represent Islam at all. It represented bin Laden's weird ideology.
To do it too.
And yeah, Bill Clinton tried to kill bin Laden too, but he didn't invade a country to do it. And then when he did throw 3 cruise missiles into the middle of bin Laden's camp, the Republicans went on the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate and said that he was doing it to wag the dog to take attention away from Monica Lewinsky and the impeachment. I mean, you can't, Carl, you can't drag that one out. But how different would the world be if George W. Bush had acted like a statesman rather than a thin-skinned, reactive political opportunist and said, yes, let's pull the world together, let's prosecute these guys, rather than let's blow up 2 Muslim countries?
Well, I think I would have gone into Iraq and Afghanistan as a response to 9/11 as well. So I think you're asking the wrong guy. I mean, I was there firsthand, and I know that we needed to be there. And if you, why? Because the entire country was fostering hatred for America and building armies against us. I mean, Saddam Hussein, even though we put him in power, he was a disaster for the countrymen. And he was
Saddam Hussein was writing romance novels. He had destroyed all his WMD. His country was filled with UN weapons inspectors. Hans Blick certified over and over again, there's no WMD here. And we know now that Saddam Hussein was writing romance novels. That's what he was reduced to.
You're saying there was no WMDs during the time of war over there?
You mean, are you talking about the stuff that Rumsfeld sold, or that Ronald Reagan sold to Saddam Hussein to use against the Iranians?
I'm talking about nuclear material or chemical biological weapons. You're saying that we did not go into Iraq to stop the expansion and use of, or potential use of chemical and biological.
Yes, I'm saying that. None of that stuff was there. The UN had taken care of it.
Okay, well, you know what? I can patently disagree with that because I was there and recovered some of that stuff. So you're wrong, Thom.
Not enough to harm us. Not enough to represent any kind of consequential threat. And Carl, you know, if we're gonna invade every country in the world that's full of people who hate us, we should probably start with what? Pakistan, and then Bangladesh, and then maybe India, and then you know, this is crazy.
So, but I mean, Thom, let's go back to the fact that you're basing your facts off of absolutely zero evidence because you weren't there and I was, and I'm sitting here refuting your evidence based on firsthand accounts, and you're sitting there telling me that I'm wrong.
Yeah, and you are wrong, Carl. There was no reason for us to invade Iraq. There was absolutely no reason, and we have lost thousands of lives and over $1 trillion, and we've got the hatred of the world as a result of it. It's a terrible, terrible outcome. Anyhow, Carl Higbie, gwleadershipfoundation.com, and his book is excuse me, hang on just a second, I'll get it right here.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Carl's book is Enemies, Foreign and Domestic, a SEAL's Story. Carl, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks, Thom.
Good talking with you. We'll be back.